Hi! Hello, welcome back to Books, Tea and Biscuits 2024.
Yes, New Year, January.
Yeah, January, piggy month, but good for reading. Because we didn't have lots to do between Christmas, New Year and now, so we've done quite a bit of reading between us.
Yes, well Joe's done the majority of it. I have had work, so I've only read 3, but Joe's read 5.
I read 4 more, so I've got 5 books to review, but they're not going to be long reviews, I promise.
So it won't be another hour-long video. We'll try and get it as short as we can, not give too many spoilers, but go into enough detail to give our views, yeah?
Yes.
But because Joe's got 5, she's going to kick us off with one of hers.
Yes.
And then we'll just take it in turns to review.
But before that, I know we said Books, Tea and Biscuits, but we've got hot chocolate in special mugs.
Yeah.
Now those of you will recognise these mugs, Cats in Space mugs. We suggest if you want to buy some, they're very, very nice. Right, my first book is a very intriguing one because it's all true and the author's name is anonymous. And when you see the title, you'll know why it's called what it is and why he's not put his name. I Am A Hitman. Yay! This book I got from Milton Keynes last year, 15th of December, when I went to see Cats in Space. Yeah, hi. And with Pamela, and she gave him a load of books at the hotel we were staying at, and we were allowed to have a book, and I saw this and thought, I've got to have this. It's true, the guy is still free, he's never been caught. Basically, he was from Brazil. He was born in Brazil. He was lied to constantly by his family as to who his family were. He finds out that the guy he's been calling uncle is really his dad. And he's not really loved very much. He's used and abused in one way or another. And when he grows up, apart from going into army, he ends up going into the French Foreign Legion. Now those of us who don't really know much about the French Foreign Legion, we do know that they're brutal. We do know that they're not very nice people. They do the job and they do it the best way they know how. While he was fighting, there was an ex-squaddie who was now in the French Foreign Legion. And this young man, there was obviously terrorists that they were fighting, and he saw somebody who tried to shoot at him, and he managed to go into this building. He was chasing them and he shot him from a stairwell, not realising that the bullet that he shot the baddie with ricocheted and hit a child, and the child died, and he never got over that, never. But his superior officer came in the building and realised what had happened and covered it up. Now you might think, oh, you know, protecting his own. No, not protecting his own at all. He had plans for this young man. When they came out, because they both got badly hurt in a mine, you know, a landmine went off, and the senior officer was exceptionally hurt, and the other lad was hurt but not as bad. You don't know his name because obviously he doesn't want to give it.
Yeah.
His mate, he gives the name of Haig, so that he won't, I mean he's dead now, but so he wouldn't get caught. And basically he says to this chap, you know, you're good, and why don't we start a business of getting rid of the bad guys? He puts it a bit more differently to that, but that's basically what he means. And they agree to start their own business. But in order for them not to be caught, he starts a kosher business. Mm-hmm. And that is, he realises that there's money in finding bones, dinosaur bones. So he starts a business in selling, you know, coming across and selling dinosaur bones, and actually making a business, but it also gives an excuse to be in that country.
Yeah.
Wherever anybody, and this is what happens. But he also gets married, which is a mistake, because the young girl he marries, who's also Brazilian, is not stupid. She doesn't trust him because he keeps having these unusual telephone calls, and he's got a spare phone that he doesn't know she knows about, and she thinks he's having an affair with his mate, H. But of course he's not. he's killing people. And the way they do it, they do have guides, they have guidelines. They will not kill children, they will not kill women, and they will not kill people for personal gain. So it'd be no good Cousin Francis going up and saying, will you kill so-and-so so that I can get the money? That's a no-no. Nobody knows who he is, nobody knows what he looks like. His name is the Ghost. He's known as the Ghost, that's the nickname he's given. And the way he kills them generally is to make it a proper accident. They normally die by accident. Only twice does he make it suicide, and that's because one of them is on drugs anyway, which makes it easier. The other one has got cancer, and he gives him a choice. He puts the gun to the guy goes up because he's in hospital. He's got cancer. He goes into the hospital to visit this chap, and he follows him because he smokes even though he's got cancer, and he's not allowed to smoke in the hospital, so he goes up to the roof, and he's gone on the roof, and he gets his gun out. He has no intention of shooting him, but the lad don't know that, the chap, and he goes up and he puts the gun behind his head so he wouldn't see it when he fired it, if he fired it, and he said, you have a choice. You can let me shoot you, or you jump and maybe survive the jump. And he jumps, and he doesn't survive the jump. And he goes off, and nobody sees him. That's why he's known as a ghost.
Wow.
His wife finds out because he does end up telling his wife what he does for a living, and they've got loads of money. And instead of leaving him, she decides to just accept him. She doesn't like what he's doing, and she lets him know it, but he's somebody she loves. And she realises, she can't live without him. She's not happy what he does, and because of that, he decides he's going to stop. And he tells his buddy Haig, who he thinks isn't a buddy at all, because Haig had said, if your wife gives trouble, we've got to deal with her. And he's not happy about that. But then he never hears from Haig for a while, and he goes to find out what's happened. And he sees that the house had been burnt. And he finds out that he was badly injured, he's in a care home, and then all of a sudden he's dead. And it turns out that the guys, the chaps, because they worked for the governments, they worked for mafia, they didn't always know they were mafia, but it got an inkling. All these different hierarchy officials had hired them, not knowing who he was, never seen him, never knowing his name. And they're after him, so they went to Haig, who they know because he's the intermediary, and they tortured him into giving a name, and he wouldn't give him up, he wouldn't say who he was, so he was truly a friend. And they ended up making him walk off the 4th floor window and die, which is what happens. And he decides there and then, I've got to protect my wife, I've got to protect my family because she's had a baby by this time, so he decides to give it up. And he writes the book about it. And he states in the book, he's changed names of the people that have been got rid of, because otherwise people might recognise the name and think, oh, I know who was there, and come after him. And he's admitted in the book to people that are after him that he's not going to say anything, he's not going to talk about them or anything, he's not going to give their names, in the hopes that they won't go after him. And so far, he's been lucky. It is really good. He doesn't go into that much detail, so it's not anything that if you start reading it, you're not going to think, oh my God, there. It's not like that at all. He says at the start that he's not going to go into minute detail because it's tasteless. But, it is a good book. I'll just give you a little bit. Hitmen commit heinous crimes virtually every day of the week, and in most instances we don't even realise. I've been a killer for hire for more than 20 years now, but life as a full-time professional assassin has never been easy. There have been close calls, failed attempts, and a lot of looking over my shoulder. And now I've decided to come clean and seek atonement for my life as a secret murderer and one of the most dangerous men alive. This is an account of a life lived between your world and a shadowy underworld of criminals. A life lived under the radar of the law, a life lived in death. This is the story of my life as a hitman, and it's definitely a 5 out of 5.
Cool. Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. I started reading this on the 16th of December because I'd run out of other stuff to read. And I finished reading this on the 16th of December because I couldn't put it down.
Cool. Okay, well, the book I'm going to be reading, this will probably be controversial if you've read this book, and it's because obviously I'm one to not follow the trends and obviously, you know, not listen to people's opinions, but I thought I was going to like this book from, well, I thought I was going to love this book from what I'd heard about it. I'd watched Katie Coulson's video and I'd watched Meg with Books video about it. And I found this in the library and I went into it thinking, oh, I can't wait to read it. But unfortunately, I do only give it a 3.5 stars out of 5 for this, not a 5 out of 5, and that's Alone With You in the Ether by Olivie Blake. Now, I don't know if you know, Olivie Blake is a popular author for the Atlas 6, the Atlas Paradox. And I do really like her writing style usually. So we'll go into the story first and then I'll explain why I don't really like it. So this book is about two protagonists, Aldo and Regan. How would you say it? Regan. And it's about the time they met and how they get to know each other. So Aldo is a student of like time travel, chemistry and things like that. He's obsessed with time travel and that's what the hexagons are meant to represent. He loves bees and things like that.
Is Regan a male or female?
Female.
Regan, sorry.
Yeah.
Regan.
Her name's actually Charlotte Regan, but she doesn't like the name Charlotte because of her history, so everyone calls her Regan. He's sat in an area of the Art Institute that he's not meant to be, and she's the one that goes and tells him that he has to move, he's not allowed to be there. And they get talking, but he's the type of person that will not just listen to what you're saying. If he does listen, he'll look at your expression, if your pupils dilate, if you're lying. He's that kind of, he's so intelligent.
So he looks at body language as well.
But you could be talking and he's not listening to you, he's thinking about something else.
Okay.
So he, obviously, they like what he had, they want to get to meet. Regan's got a boyfriend who's rich, she's not rich. Aldo doesn't have a partner. But they agree to meet, and not like agree to meet in the chances of making something of a relationship, but because he wants to have 6 conversations with her to find out if he can find out all he can about her without actually asking her like direct questions. See if she's lying, because he'll ask her a specific question and then he'll look at her body language or, you know, even the slightest expression of the corner of her mouth to see if she's a visual liar, you look up or something.
They say if you look
if you look up, you're trying to visualise.
If you look left, you're creating.
Yeah.
If you look right, you're telling the truth.
And he'll look at things like that, like body language, expression, pupils in the eye, the tone of the voice as well. He loves bees. He explains, you know, he explains to Regan how male bees work, as they only have one chance of mating with the queen and then they'll die. He explains what the hives are, what the hexagons actually represent. And they have these 6 conversations. Now, I haven't said that this book is a love story. It's not actually a romance, and people get that confused. So a romance is the tale of 2 people falling in love and it has a happy ending. A love story is different. The ending, you don't know if it's going to be a bad ending or a happy ending. This is unfortunately the one where it's a love story with a bad ending. I'm not going to say what the bad ending is, but they end up falling in love. It's a love story. They have these 6 conversations, both go out of their comfort zone, and it's a really good story. I love the story. The thing that puts me off is the narrative and the writing. So I've read it and then I thought I was seeing things, and then I also downloaded the audiobook to see if I can listen to it that way, but it's even worse. So it would be like a narrative. So in the audiobook, what happens, it will say that Regan has a therapy session, but then the narrator will interject in a completely different voice and say, Here now Reagan's thoughts are blah 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 blah. Reagan was 5 minutes late to this session. Does that really mean that she wanted to be there? Does she go into detail? And then it just goes back to the story of the therapist actually asking her questions, but the narrator isn't the therapist and it's not Reagan. So you've got like somebody narrating the life, but not narration as in they're reading the book.
Not like Stephen Fry would or
Yeah.
Martin Shaw would.
I'm trying to find an excerpt from here, so let's go from the beginning. I've got to take this back to the library today.
Yeah, I've got to take mine back.
Right, so it is into 6 parts. So look, it says the narrator, an ageing archaic man in possession of many books. So we interrupt your perusal of Aldo Damien's intrusive thoughts to provide some necessary academic insights. The great Kurt Gödel, the 20th century logician and friend of Albert Einstein, believed that continuous trajectory of light cones towards the future meant that one could always return to the same point in space-time. It is Aldo's essential thesis that these cones travel methodically, perhaps even predictably, along hexagonal paths. And then it will go back to the actual story.
Is there a reason for that?
And that's what I mean, I don't like it.
Yeah,
it's
it
weird.
drives
So
me nuts.
you'll have like your story,
Yeah.
your actual story that you're reading, and then
You get that bit.
indented or in italics or in highlight, you'll have the actual narrator. So it's kind of like a voice in your head, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't like it.
No,
It kept confusing me and putting me off.
That would drive me nuts.
It did me, and I'm like, it can't just be me. So that's why I even tried to read this along with the audio book, but I just couldn't. It was confusing. I read it all the way through. I would read it again, and I would recommend it, and that's only because I've heard that if you read something again, you either find that if you really dislike it, if it's just, you know, your mindset at the time, and you know, you could pick things up that you might have missed the first time round. And the reason I would recommend it to somebody is because people need to make up their own mindset, don't they?
Yeah.
You can't be led by, you know, people's influences, and that's how book reviews work. I know what the point of them are, but I like to go into it with a clear mind.
I think if I did read anything like that, or got a book where they got a narration, I would miss the narration. I would ignore that bit and just carry on with the story, because that would drive me really crackers.
I know there's a point to it, and it's meant to give more detail about
but
the,
no, it
the
throws
thoughts,
you off.
Yeah, it threw me off quite a lot. So I'm just going to read the blurb, the synopsis, whatever you call it, and then I'll wrap up my quick review. So it says, in the Chicago Art Gallery, 2 people meet by chance. He is a doctoral student consumed by calculations and time travel, which he uses as a distraction from his destructive thoughts. She is a bipolar counterfeit artist undergoing court-ordered psychotherapy. By the end of the story, these things will still be true, but this is not a story about endings. For Reagan, people are predictably tedious, including and perhaps especially herself. She copes with the dreariness of existence by living impulsively, sometimes imagining a new, alternate timeline springing from each rash decision. To Aldo, the world feels chaotic, so he's erected a wall of routines, a backbeat of rules. Without them, the framework of his existence would collapse. For Reagan and Aldo, life has involved resigning themselves to society's expectations, but could 6 conversations with a stranger be a variable that disrupts the entire situation?
Ah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds really good,
It does.
and the story is really good. Like, Olivie Blake's writing is amazing, but why she decided to put the narration in there, I don't know. Because especially if you're listening to this, like you're driving a long journey, you put your audiobook on, and you've already got the narrator reading the story, then you've got another narrator.
That I think would get me annoyed, because I'll be thinking, what the hell am I listening to?
And I've read obviously full cast narrations before, which is, you know, I'll play one character, Joe plays another, kind of like a movie, but it's a book, okay? They're fine. When it's the narrator in a completely different pace, in a completely different style, that isn't an actual character in the story, it's like a voice in your head, and it's so weird, and I couldn't get over that. So just for that, I'm going to knock it down to 3.5. If it wasn't for the narration, it would get a 5. Right. But it confused me so much. Now, I'm not a stupid person. by any stretch of the imagination, but I just couldn't get over that.
No.
And I really wanted to like this Katie Colson, I'm blaming you. But yeah, that's my review of that. I love the story. I didn't like the style of the writing or the style of the narration. Okay, so I know in the books, Joe, just wanted to explain, in the books we have to give a narration, we have to give like so you've got 10 books, so I gave it 7 out of 10 because I feel that 3.5 out of 5 is the same as 7 out of 10 because it's doubled.
Yeah.
But yeah, in here, my PPA reading journal, it gets 7 out of 10. From Goodreads, because you only rate it from 5, it's 3.5 out of 5 for me, which is the same rating.
Yeah.
So that's that one. Joe, what's next for you?
Right. This is a psychological thriller. You know me and my psychological thrillers. Nicci French, The Safe House. Love Nicci French.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's a doctor, Dr. Samantha Lashen, I think her name is. Yeah, Lashen. And she specialises in post-traumatic stress disorder. And she's obviously a psychologist, and that's what she's specialising in. And she's got a daughter, Elsie, who's only about 4 or 5. And she's the father died. He killed himself, committed suicide. She's now got a chap named Danny, her fella, and they go along quite happily. And then this one day, it's all over the news, over the papers, the family have been brutally murdered, and the young girl was left for dead, has survived, and she's in hospital, but obviously they think that she needs a safe house because people are going to be trying to kill her. And they think, oh, what better than to put her with somebody who's studying post-traumatic stress disorder? So she gets a call from a friend, a psychology friend, who she thinks a lot of, who says, let's all meet, let's meet up, have a chat and whatever, because I know you move into a new hospital and you're going to set up a new department to do with post-traumatic stress disorder. And she goes to visit this so-called friend, and it's a set-up. And the friend is sort of basically asking her what the police want her to do, and that is, will you look after Fiona Mackenzie? She's known as Fee. And she says no at first. She says, I don't want to. I've got a new job coming up soon. I've got a daughter who's only about 4, who's 4 or 5, little Elsie. I've got a young daughter, and I don't want anything encroaching on her. But she ends up agreeing to it, but makes them give her a timeline. So she's going to be looking after this girl until the middle of March, end of. And this girl comes along. There's something not quite right about her. The girl's GP seems exceptionally caring for this young girl, and there's something not right about that either. And she plays a game with her daughter Elsie. It's known as putting things in your safe house. So then what happens is she'll say, right, you've got this, a bucket of water, where have you put it? And she'll say, on the path, and stuff like that. So she asks Fiona to try it, in the hopes that maybe she'll get more information out of her, because she doesn't really want to ask her. And this goes on for a while, and her boyfriend Danny's not happy about it, because obviously she's focusing on Fiona and her daughter, and he's sort of second wind, as it were. She's not doing what she should, and she tries, but she finds it very hard to believe, because on the same day that they supposedly ran off and committed suicide, she got a letter from the holiday company. He'd paid for them to go away so they would have their special time together, and he'd arranged for her daughter to be looked after by the nanny who she loves, which is Lynn, and her mum. And she can't believe that in that case, within an hour or so of making this arrangement, he's going to run off with another girl. So she finds it very difficult to believe, and she starts investigating.
Yeah.
And she goes to the police, and the police are getting fed up of her. And she says he wouldn't kill himself. Danny would not kill himself. and he didn't run away with her. I don't want to believe he ran away with her. And she looks into it and she finds that Danny didn't kill himself, he was murdered. And that the girl she knew as Mackenzie was not Fiona Mackenzie. So who was she? It doesn't tell you who she really was, so I'm not going to be giving anything.
Were they having an affair?
No.
Okay.
But I'm not going to say who else was involved.
Okay.
But the main character is involved within the murders. So it's really good. I gave this a 5. I'll read the blurb on the back, or whatever you want to call it. Samantha Lashan, a doctor specialising in post-traumatic stress disorder, has moved to the Essex coast with her small daughter Elsie to escape the problems of her London life. Or so she thinks. Fiona Mackenzie barely survived the savage murderous attack which left her parents dead. Now she's in need of sanctuary, and the police see Sam as the ideal person to offer her a safe house. Already overburdened with the demands of a new job and her mercurial lover Danny, Sam reluctantly agrees to take her in, but as Fiona makes her way into the hearts of her hosts, Sam discovers that the risks she has foreseen are nothing to the terrifying danger she actually faces. So, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but she wasn't Fiona Mackenzie. Fiona Mackenzie was murdered by this girl and somebody else. And because nobody had seen Fiona Mackenzie, they believed she was Fiona Mackenzie. It's a very good book. As you're reading it, you're thinking, you start, there's like red herrings without being red herrings.
Yeah.
You know, they're not deliberate, it's you're interpreting them. And you're thinking, oh, he's the one. No, he's the one. He's involved and all that. So it's very, very good. I do recommend it. There's just 1 or 2 light-hearted moments because there is a little 4-year-old involved. They play this game, and in this game, her mum, I wrote it down, it was one of my favourite bits actually in the book because it was so funny. I thought it was so funny. Not everybody will think it's funny, but I did. Am A Hitman. Hitman and her. Where is it? No, that's not it. I've missed it. Yeah. She's drawn a picture for her mum at school, and she brings it back, and her mum says, "Oh, that's a nice horse." And she says, "It's not a horse, it's an elephant." No, correction, her mum says, "That's a nice elephant." And she says, "It's not an elephant, it's a horse." She says, "It looks like an elephant, but it's a horse." And her mum says, "I look like an ordinary woman. Could I be a horse?" And Elsie says, "I don't know. Could you?" Bearing in mind she's only about 4. You know, it's just little light-hearted moments like that make it very realistic with the daughter and her mum and the undercurrent of violence and whatever that's going on. You've got this tiny little light-hearted moment which really helps with the book. But I did enjoy it, and it is definitely another 5 out of 5.
Okay, cool. So my next review is on another library book that I got out, and this is the fantasy novel The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I don't know if anyone's watched this. I don't know if anyone's read this.
I've never heard of it.
But yeah, it's really good. I love this book. There's times I laughed, there's times I cried. I'm just going to read a few things off the cover and then go into why I loved it. So it says The Midnight Library, which is a #1 Sunday Times bestseller. One library, infinite lives. Would you have done anything different if you had the chance to undo your regrets?
I think everybody would say yes to that.
So this is about protagonist Nora Seed. At the beginning of the book we find out that she, when she was younger, her dad always used to take her to swimming classes, and she was that good that she thought, and her dad thought, and wanted her to be an Olympic swimmer. She was really good. And then she stopped it because of the pressures of it all, and she wanted to be a glaciologist. And then she didn't go into doing that throughout her life. She was actually in this band with her brother called the Labyrinths, and it actually sounds really good, the labyrinth. Like, from when I explain what happens, they were amazing. Sounds like a hippie band.
Yeah, I like the name. Somebody's got to use that name.
But then she left the band as well. So she has all these regrets because all these things she wanted to do, she didn't ever do. So now she winds up living in this small flat in London, working in a music shop called String Theory. And she has her friend, actually, one of the other regrets that she doesn't do is going to Australia with a friend. A friend asked her to move to Australia with her.
Oh, right.
And she says no, she turns down the opportunity, even though everyone's saying, yeah, you should go. She doesn't do that either, so just going back to where she lives in this little flat in London. She doesn't have many friends apart from Izzy, who's a friend in Australia, and they haven't spoken or had a proper conversation in months. She doesn't speak to her brother in this life. She has just been sacked from work. She's not swimming anymore, and she's not doing philosophy or studying to be a glaciologist. So she's also piano tutoring, and then because she's late, the mum of the child she's tutoring cancels, so she doesn't even have that going on in her life, and her cat dies. Her cat is...
She's going through a bad time, isn't she?
They think that the cat initially is run over by a car because he's found in the gutter with his head on the curb. Oh no, but he's not. He hasn't been run over. And he's called Voltaire. The French philosopher Voltaire. Yeah. But she calls him Volt for short. Anyway, the whole part is coming up. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll just skim over it. She's dismissed from her job, so she gets sacked. Because the company really can't afford, they're not having a good time anyway, and the owner can't afford to keep her on.
Well, it's being made redundant then, really, isn't it, as opposed to a sacking?
Well, it doesn't close yet until she's sacked.
Yeah, but what I mean is they can't say she's sacked because she's done anything wrong. It would have to be like a redundancy type of thing.
No, because the company's not closing. The company's still there.
To, but her department's closing.
And so on this one night she plans to unalive herself, and she leaves her friend and her brother a voicemail. And it comes to the time that she's going to do it, which is midnight, and she does it, but you don't actually get to the point where she's gone, but she's unconscious. But in the state of her being unconscious, there's this library that pops up, and it's the Midnight Library, but it's not real, it's in her consciousness.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the librarian is a librarian she used to have at school called Mrs. Elm. But don't forget, in this library, she's not real, it's a figment of her imagination. And then she goes into this library, and as soon as she goes into the entrance goes. So she's in this huge library, the aisles are huge. Mrs. Elm explains, what it is. This is a midnight library. It comes when you want to get rid of your regrets, go into different lives and things like that. So what happens is on these shelves there's all these books lined up, and all the regrets that people have in life in case they want to undo anything. But ultimately there's this one big book called the Regret Book, and it's a big grey book, and Mrs. Elm passes it to Nora and goes, these are all your regrets, and Nora can't bear the weight of it. It's really heavy, and she opens it to have a look at what all the regrets are. She starts sobbing and crying, and she goes, no, I want it to close, but because it's so heavy she can't even close the cover. Mrs. Elm has to do it, and Mrs. Elm explains that in this library Nora can explain what kind of regret she wants to try and undo and go into that life and try and undo it, but it will be a parallel life to the one she's living. Well, not living because she's she's not. She's unconscious at the minute.
Yeah.
But time doesn't move in the Midnight Library unless something's gone on in one of the parallel lives. So she chooses the book that she wants to go into, and it's like, does she marry the partner she was with that she left 2 days before the wedding, who wanted to open the pub in the countryside? She does go into that life, and it's not what, and because what happens is, you say to the librarian, Mrs. Elm, I want to undo that regret of leaving my husband, or leaving my soon-to-be husband.
Yeah.
I want him to open the pub that he wanted to open. So when she goes into that life, because all you have to do is open the book and read the first couple of lines and it will take you automatically into that life.
Right.
So she goes into that life and she obviously has no memory because she just got into there. But Nora's always been there, just now it's her consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's not the life she was thinking of, like a husband's. Not that he's not a nice person, but he's quite distant with her, and in this life she finds out that he's had an affair. It's not the life she wanted. You can't just automatically go to what you was hoping, because
no, you've got to let
you've got to learn.
pan out.
Yeah. So then it doesn't go out how she wanted, doesn't pan out how she wanted, and then once you're in the life, if you're disappointed by what you see, you have this feeling of the library's pulling you back because you don't want to be in that life. So then she'll go back into the library because she's not happy with the life she's been put into.
And then choose.
And then she chooses another life. So that's what it says, one library, infinite lives. So then she's back into the library, she can feel it happening. Obviously that life with her and the husband is still going on, but it's not her consciousness. So the Nora in that life won't remember what's just been said or happened.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, in this life, with her being the Olympic swimmer, her brother is her manager. He's not doing the labyrinths anymore, because she finds out he's a reformed alcoholic, and while she's doing the presentation with her being an Olympic swimmer, because she's retired now, but she's really famous, she's got this nice house, and that's all she wanted was fame, have friends, people around her, have money, so she doesn't have to struggle with money. But it's not what she wanted. She goes, the pressure was unimaginable. I didn't want the pressure, I felt lonely, even though I had the fame and the fortune, I felt lonely. So she was disappointed with the life. So she went back to the library, and then she chose another life. That life was her actually moving to Australia with her friend Izzy.
Right.
After they'd moved to Australia, her friend was killed in a car crash after a few months, but obviously Nora just got to that life, so Nora's consciousness doesn't know that her friend's died. So she I'm going to do wakes up in the consciousness of her being in Australia in this swimming pool, and she's looking for her friend. She can't see her friend. She sees that she's got the wristband around her locker to go and get her clothes, and then she finds out eventually where she lives. And she goes into the flat, and her roommate is there at the computer, and obviously Nora asks her about Izzy, and she goes, Izzy, your friend that you've moved to Australia with? And then when she finds out that her friend's died in a car crash, she's disappointed, so she goes back to the library and she chooses all these lives, what could have possibly have happened. So she goes to be a glaciologist, so she's ended up in Svalbard in Norway, and people quiz her on the day's events, the previous 24 hours event. She's meant to be the watcher to watch out for the polar bears when they're going to look, so she needs to stand there, look out for polar bears, but she doesn't know what she's doing because the Nora in that life would. But don't forget, it's her consciousness now, so she doesn't know what she's doing because she's just there in that 1 second. She's changed, so then she gets disappointed. But then in the life where she goes to be a glaciologist, she meets this other person called Hugo Lefebvre, and he's a Frenchman, and he's in the same boat as Nora. He's doing the same as Nora. He's tried to unalive himself. And he's flicking between these infinite lives, but this is his 300th, I believe. He can't find a life that he's happy with, that things pan out exactly how they want. But life isn't meant to happen like that. Things don't pan out how we want them to. And as long as you're happy in life, then that's okay. But again, to get her out of Norway, what happens? I can't remember exactly what happens. The polar bear thing, finding out about Hugo, and then obviously he gives her these inspirational quotes, and he tells her to keep looking if she's not happy, and then she's gone again, back to the library, and then she chooses a life where she is in the band, the Labyrinths. She's singing in the arena. She doesn't know any of the songs to the words, though, because don't forget she's never been in that position before. So she decides to go out and tell the crowd she's mixing it up and she's doing something wild, and she sings Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel, and the crowd love it. But then after that, she keeps asking her friend Ravi and all the other bandmates and the manager where her brother is, because this is her brother's band, and nobody would. Well, she goes, "Where's Joe?" But Joe's their manager, Joanna. So when they ask where Joe is, she goes, "Oh, she's dealing with the foreign press." So she goes, "I'll speak to him later." After the concert tour is finished of that arena in Brazil, I think they're in Sao Paulo, yeah. She's having a 2-hour interview with the press, and she goes on about her thought process and why she did Bridge Over Troubled Water, not telling people that she doesn't know what the words to the songs are that they've written a few months ago. And he goes, everyone loves it, and then she goes, "I want to speak to my brother, I want to speak to Joe." And then other Joe, Joanne, tells him that he died. He died in that life. He's not in the labyrinth anymore because he can't be. Alcohol and drugs got him, so she's disappointed. So she comes back to the library, but on a couple of the times she comes back, the library really struggles to get her back. Like, the lights are flickering, the shelves are quaking, because is time moving, is time affecting? She's too late to choose the life she wants. So,
well, is she dying in the current life where she's managed to...
That's what we're finding out too. So Mrs. Elm tells her that, life, you need to look at the smaller things to make it truly happen. It's not all about the big picture. So she actually realises, after the polar bear event, after her brother passing away, after a friend passing away, she doesn't want to die. And that's all it takes for her to realise, I shouldn't have done what I've done. But when she says that, the library goes on fire, they get in the book, she sees Mrs. Elm, getting trapped, and she goes, Nora, you need to make the right decision, She goes, there's one book on the 11th aisle, third shelf from the left, you'll see it's not on fire. Third shelf on the bottom even, you'll see that it's not on fire. That's a book you need. So she gets his book, she has to start writing the book, because the book's blank, because it hasn't been written yet, because it's going to take Nora back to the life where she tried to unalive herself, take it back to that time at 12, exactly midnight at 1 second, at 2 seconds, at 3 seconds, and the book will go down, so she doesn't have long before the library's actually collapsed. So time is slowly moving in the library now, because things are happening on the outside, in the ether, let's say. Yeah. And she's starting to write this book, and she goes, I want to go back to this time, nothing happens. I want to do this, nothing happens. I want to wake up, nothing happens. So the book's not. So she realises, she thinks about it, and she thinks about Mrs. Elm's words about saying it's the smaller things, and all she has to write in the book to take her back to that time where she will wake up in that timeline is, I don't want to die. And then it takes her back. So then she wakes up, she makes herself vomit, she realises, that she's got no one to talk to, she's got no family at this point, her brother's not speaking to her, she can't speak to her friend. She goes across the road to a neighbour, and they call an ambulance and get her into hospital, and life is, she's happy in the life. So you find out what happens after a couple of months, after a couple of weeks. Her brother is speaking to her, he was just in his own depressive state. Her friend, when she actually wakes up in that life again, her friend had actually messaged her and said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, life just got away with me. I miss our chats. I'm going to come back to the UK to move back permanently. I've got so much to tell you." The tutor, who she's tutoring the piano, the mother actually is calling her after a few days of her coming out of hospital and says, "Oh, the kid really misses," I can't remember the son's name, I think it's called Leo, yeah. The son, Leo, he really misses the lessons. He's just been telling me how much he wants to go back to the tutoring, and so that's back on. So her life is turning out how it how she wants it to.
So, thinking about this, the Midnight Library is just a way of you not really dealing with regrets, but seeing how the life, if you'd have lived it, wouldn't have worked anyway.
Yeah, but you won't know that till you go there.
Of course you wouldn't until you go there. So it's teaching you a lesson to just be glad for the life you've got. That's what it is.
So that's why I was laughing and crying, because it really makes your life not come crashing down, but makes you realise and be happy for the things you've got. Yeah, they may not go to plan, but they will turn out in the end. And I'm going to read the synopsis quick. So, between life and death, there is a library. When Nora Seed finds herself in the Midnight Library, she has a chance to make things right. Up until now, her life has been full of misery and regret. She feels she has let everyone down, including herself, but things are about to change. The books in the Midnight Library enable Nora to live as if she had done things differently. With the help of an old friend, she can now undo every one of her regrets as she tries to work out her perfect life. But things aren't always what she imagined they'd be, and soon her choices place the library and herself in extreme danger. Before time runs out, she must answer the ultimate question: what is the best way to live? I absolutely love this book, guys. I'm giving this book 5 stars out of 5, and I cannot wait for the movie adaptation. They've started to make a movie about this, yeah. Benedict Cumberbatch has been signed up, so the person who was the new modern Sherlock and Doctor Strange, he's going to be in the film. I don't know what character he's going to be. I'm assuming Ash or her brother. But yeah, I
might actually have the librarian as a male as opposed to a
could
female.
be.
He'd be good in that.
But yeah, I loved it. Trigger warning though, I should have said this at the beginning. Obviously it deals with mental health issues, suicide, alcohol, drugs. So yeah, but just be mindful if you do pick this up. But I absolutely love this book. I could not put it down. I just wanted to know what was happening. Joe, you'd love this. So if you do want to get it out, get it out. But this is going back to the library today. Sad because...
Which did you get that?
Ward End.
Oh, yeah, I can get that.
But because I love it that much, I think that I'm actually going to go and find a paperback version and have my own copy. Because, again, and I said it with the last book, I'm a firm believer that if you read something again, you'll find out even more about not only the book, but about yourself. Because to me, this is like a lesson for us as well. But yeah, if you want to read this, I wholly recommend this book to you, okay? That's a 5 star out of 5 for me. I love this book.
Good.
So, yeah.
My next one.
This video is going to be so
This
long.
is a bit of a light-hearted one, sort of. A Year at the Star and Sixpence.
Oh.
Now, at the start of this, we should have said that the subject matter is new starts and everything. Which, obviously, new start because the hitman stopped doing what he was doing, new start because that doctor ended up leaving Essex and going back to London and everything. And in this one, it's about 2 sisters. Now, these 2 sisters basically grew up without the dad. They were young when he decided to leave. He got an alcohol problem and he walked out on a mum and Ben. And they've never heard from him. What they don't know, because the mum never let them know, was he used to write to them and she never gave them the letters.
Oh.
So the 2 sisters, you've got Vanessa, known as Nessie, who's married, and her and her husband, they're splitting up. I don't think he's realised that yet. He doesn't seem to know that she's gone anywhere. And she's left and picked up her sister, who's named Sam, I think, and she's single. Now, Sam had a high-powered job. She was in PR for celebrities and high-class people and lots of well-known people. And she was very good at her job. But she has come with her sister leaving that job. And you find out later on that she didn't actually leave it. She got the push.
Oh.
And she was given an option. We're sacking you anyway, so you can either resign and have a little bit of extra money. And the reason it happened was not her fault. So they go to this pub, this country area where everybody knows who they are before they got there. And they get there late at night because they didn't know the way and they got lost, and then they get there late at night and there's no light and the sister says, I'll go down and find a light, Sam does, and that leaves Nessie on her own. And all of a sudden this big, tall bloke is standing in the doorway, and she's thinking, oh my God. And he says, oh, I've bought some food for you. I'm the blacksmith next door. And he says, I can get the light on for you. It always happens round here. And her sister's found the light, and she comes up, she goes, oh, hello. And it starts from there. And the next day they go to the post office, and the postwoman there, Franny, her name is, tells them in no uncertain terms they've got to get the business up and running again, and they've only got till Christmas. Oh. They've got to get it running, up and running by Christmas. And her word is law. So, because Sam gives her a bit of a mouthful, she don't like the girls.
Yeah.
And she starts giving them a hard time. But then Nessie, who is very, very diplomatic in what she does, gets on the right side of her. And they do get the work done. They start to fall in love with the place. It's not what they thought, and everybody's so friendly and kind and helpful. And they get the builders in, and they change everything. And they decide, with Sam's PR background, she can get things done for next to nothing, which is what happens. And during one of these, she's got a friend who's a well-known celebrity, Nick Barrowdale. Apparently he's in this Smugglers In programme in the book. And she knows him, of course everybody's heard of him, and she says, I'll get him to open the pub or whatever. So they all love her then. And he turns up, and there's a guy there named Joss who used to look after the barrels and everything when her dad lived there and worked there and owned it. And he wants to work there again. And she and Joss start to get a thing going. She sort of suddenly starts to fancy him, but he's quite jealous personality. And she finds out by somebody that the reason why she got the push is going to be in the papers. She had an affair with an MP who apparently, she didn't know at the time, this MP was new and he was the advisor to number 10, and he was going to keep everybody on the straight and narrow, no dirty laundry, so he has an affair again, and it's going to come out and she's getting the blame. So she ends up having to tell her sister, and she ends up having to tell Joss, and he's not a happy bunny, he's a very jealous person, and he dumps her, in uncertain terms. But they do end up together again, but also Nessie ends up leaving her husband. She tells him she wants a divorce because she's had endless affairs, and he's very cold towards her, and because she's not there anymore, he comes down because he's suddenly started to miss her. And he hasn't really missed her, it's because she used to get his business up and going, she used to do his accounts and that, and he's got nobody to do that now. So that's the only reason he wants her. And so they get everything that they want in respect of the business up and running, they get all sorts happening, and people backing them every step of the way. It is a lovely book, and it is about new starts, and they get close and they get to know their dad, even though he's dead. They find out by his girlfriend that he wrote all these letters to them, telling them how much he loved them. And they didn't even know he'd got a girlfriend, and she was an alcoholic as well, but they managed to do something about that for her. But it is funny as well in parts. When sisters Nessie and Sam inherit a little pub in a beautiful country village, they jump at the chance to escape their messy lives and start afresh. But when they arrive at the Star and Sixpence, it's not quite what they imagined. It's pretty much derelict, ruined by debts, and it's going to be a huge job to get it up and running again. Determined to make the best of this new life, Sam and Nessie set about making the pub the heart of the village again. But the sisters' past soon comes back to haunt them, and the fresh start they needed feels very far away indeed. But it is really, really good. It's fun, it's sort of like a love story and a romance combination with a really good ending.
Cool. So how many stars would you give it?
I would give that definitely 5. Yeah.
You're really really generous with your 5 stars. I'm not really.
No, I mean, if I've not been able to put the book down, that's how I judge it. If I put the book down and I think, I can't really be bothered to go back to it, then it's not very good stars. But I've been really lucky with most of them.
Yeah.
The only odd 1 or 2 where I've given 4, or I did give 3.5 when we first started. I gave one book nothing really, but I had to give it something because it seemed mean. So I think I gave it 2. But on the whole, I've been quite lucky with the books I've chosen. I suppose I would like to read a bad book, but I wouldn't read it. So, you know, if it's a bad book, I'll never read it.
See, for me, it gets 5 stars if, like, not just if I finish the book and if I liked it, but if I can't stop thinking about it. If you're still thinking about it days later, like, oh, we should go back to that
Which is
book.
how I've been with each one of these books.
Cool. So my last book, my last review, is a book by a Birmingham author, and I've had this book on my pile since 2020. I was part of this group on Facebook that during COVID we'd be in a buddy group and we'd buy each other books. They had to be a certain amount or under a certain amount, and they could be second hand or new. And this was one book that I had on my Amazon list, and somebody sent it to me, and I've only this week finished it and picked it up because I was reading the others, and that is Half a World Away by Gayle. Now, this is a story about Kerry and Jason, or now who's known as Noah. When they were younger, they were put into the care system and they were adopted separately, so their lives have obviously gone in different directions. Now they're technically strangers to each other because he's really young when he's adopted, but she's a teenager and she's 8 years older than him. So she remembers him, but he doesn't really know of her. Not until he gets his letter through his door saying, you know, I'm your sister, can we meet? And he agrees to meet her. But he's going through marriage issues. He's a lawyer in London. She's in London as well, but got completely different lives. He's a lawyer in London, drives a really nice car, lives in a really big house, got the perfect life, got a townhouse, beautiful wife, beautiful daughter, really nice job. They come from different sides of the track. She is a cleaner to the more high profile clients, but she lives in a flat. Not grungy, I mean she's clean and she's tidy and the flat's nice, but it's a far cry from...
It's not grandiose.
Yeah, it's a far cry from the clients that she's cleaning the houses for. And we don't actually find out till about halfway through the book the exact reason why she's decided to get in contact with her brother now. Because since they got split up and since she was able to, she's been writing to him quite frequently, to the adoption agency, because until he's turned 18 she has to go through the adoption agency. But she doesn't think that they've been passing on the letters because he's never got in contact with her. So something happens in her life, and she decides to actually directly write a letter to him now that she's found out that he's living in London. We'll say now, she's known for 5 years, but it's only now that something's happened to her that she has decided to contact him directly, put a letter through his door. She actually was sat outside in her car for a few months waiting to see if that actually was his address, and he actually came out, and she said the strength it took me to not run up and tell you about me. So anyway, we find out that his marriage isn't going very well because his wife feels that he doesn't discuss anything with her. He keeps her at arm's length. No matter what he goes through, he won't discuss with her, and recently they suffer a miscarriage and he doesn't show any kind of emotion. I mean, he knows he's grieving, but he doesn't show his wife that he's grieving, so she thinks he's cold and doesn't want to discuss anything. So it not only starts from there, it started before then, but this was basically the nail in the coffin. They're not divorced yet, but they're living separate lives to see if couples counselling can bring them together. Whereas Kerry, she's got a 10-year-old son. She's not got a partner, they've separated because he's a bit of a jerk, and she's a really good mom. She always puts herself down, but from what you read, she's a really good mum. But the thing that's happened for her to contact him directly now is that because she's got nobody else, her mum's dead, and mum was horrible anyway, the way that she treated her, and obviously putting the kids up in care. She's got no other family, so she finds out that she's got ovarian cancer, and she wants to get to know her brother so that there's at least someone in her life that can care for her son while she's having treatment or the operation, or even if the worst happens, someone that can look after her child.
Yeah.
And she doesn't tell this to him at first. After knowing each other for a few months, and obviously she's upset because every possible avenue she's gone down before asking Jason and coming clean as to why she has contacted him. It really upsets her, but he can tell in their meeting or in their day out that something's wrong. And you told me about things that have gone on, and I just didn't feel that any time was appropriate because I didn't want to take away from what you was going through. And it was then that she says, you know, I need someone to look after my boy because this has happened and I've got no other avenues to go down. And they drive home in silence. He doesn't speak to her for a few days, so she thinks she's got no other option apart from contacting the temporary foster agency just to look after him while she's having the treatment or the surgery. But that was the last thing she wanted because she spent her life in care. She didn't want her son to spend a life in care. And it's not until that she has called the agency, he calls her late at night on that day and says, I will look after your boy. Don't worry, things are going to be fine. But all throughout these meetings and that, Noah/Jason has not told his wife. So that's another thing. When she does find out, she goes, see, you keep things from me. But instead of her being angry now, she's cold and she's like, okay, fine. Anytime he goes back to, because what happens is they go to Kerry's son's birthday party, his 11th birthday party, and Jason/Noah takes his daughter, and he's told his wife, Rosalind, that they're going shopping on the West End in London, and I'm assuming that they're out and she wants something, but he's obviously driving Cian's friends around in his posh car because they're fighting over the PlayStation, and to stop the fight she goes, do you want to come round in my car? But while he's out, obviously she's ringing his phone, he's not answering. So then she calls her daughter, the daughter's not answering the phone, so she goes on to Find My Phone app on the phone and she sees her location, so she goes there and she knocks on the door and she finds out that Millie and Jason are at this lady's property, and obviously she doesn't know who Kerry is because he's told Kerry that he was going to tell her all along, but then things happen in his life and he didn't have, no time seems appropriate for him to tell Rosalind. So she does find out, and she doesn't think that he's having an affair. He does say, you know, this is my sister, I found her, well, not found her, but, you know, our lives came together on this date or for X amount of months. But she goes, she should have told me, and she's really bitter about it. He goes back to try and, because again, they're living apart, he goes home to try and fix things, but she doesn't speak to him, just goes, fine, okay, get out. So then it's a few days later, and when he actually realises that he needs to change, he needs to open up, and he goes and tells his adoptive parents that he's found his biological sister, and all this stuff that's happening. On that day he served with divorce papers, and I'm not going to go any further as to what happens.
He serves her?
No, he
served divorce
papers. And he goes and tells her what happens, and Kerry has her treatments and life goes from there. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love this book again, another one that I couldn't put down. It really made me...
Why is he so distant though? It doesn't make sense.
He just says that he's put it down to him being a lawyer because he's that busy, and he has to, his way of thinking, he's not a logical thinker. He has to have...
Well, I understand he can't sort of discuss cases, but you know.
And he's really busy and he's always late home and things like that. But yeah,
He could stop
if you
that.
read it, you'd find out why. But it's really good. Gayle has got a couple of other books that I really want to read, so he might be one of my new favourite authors. So for this one, I'm going to give a 5 out of 5. Love this book. I can't wait to pick anything else by Mike Gayle. Yeah, there's a couple of others, and I'm just proud to be representing another person, to be representing not only a black author but a Birmingham author as well. And yeah, it's really good, really emotionally high voltage. So I'm just going to quickly read the synopsis. So it says, strangers living worlds apart, but it wasn't always that way. Kerry Hayes is a single mom living on a tough South London estate. She provides for her son by cleaning houses she could never afford. Taken into care as a child, Kerry cannot forget her past. Noah Martineau is a successful barrister with a beautiful wife, daughter and a home in the fashionable Primrose Hill. Adoptees as a young child, Noah never looks back. When Kerry contacts Noah, the sibling she lost on the day they were torn apart as children, she sets in motion a chain of events that will change both of their lives forever. See, it's really good, isn't it? So yeah, when I started to read this, I've actually got goosebumps because it's that good. So the last 2 reviews I've done were my favourite 2 out of the 3 books that I read. So yeah, I love that, and I can't wait to pick up more stuff by Mike Gayle. So yeah.
Sounds good, isn't it?
So now what we're going to do, before Joe gets on, I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to go for a wee. And then I'm just going to sit back with another drink and listen to you.
I'll make a cup
review. So what's going to happen now, guys, we've got another cup of tea. I've reviewed all of my 3 books. Joe's got 2 more reviews to do, so I'm just going to sit back. You'll see me drinking the tea, and I'm going to leave it over to Joe. So if you want to carry on with your books, Joe, I'll sit and relax.
The next book to do with New Beginnings is by Carole Matthews, which I read one of hers and reviewed it over Christmas. This one's called Wrapped Up in You, which is sort of set in Christmas, but it's all to do with new things. There's a hairdresser in a salon, and she's broke up with her boyfriend. He was seeing somebody else. Let me see if I can remember her name. Because I forgot to write her name. And I've read a few of her books actually, and she's doing this woman's hair, Mrs. Norman, who does a lot of travelling. She's got a very, very wealthy gentleman who's a lot younger than her. She has a toy boy, and very happy in her marriage, and he's very wealthy, and they're always going away. And she comes back off holiday. She's been to Africa on a safari, and she's telling her all about it. And then she meets up with her ex-boyfriend, and she doesn't want him to know that her life is not good. And he's getting married to the girl he had an affair with, she's pregnant, so everything's coming. And he says, and how's it for you? And she says, I'm going to Africa for Christmas. And she had no knowledge of this, it just came out her mouth. And then she thought, forget it, I'm going. So she asks for a couple of weeks off, and she goes to Africa on a safari. She did extra overtime so she would get extra money because she couldn't afford it. And she met this guide. He was from the Masai Mara, and she fell in love with him.
Oh.
And he fell in love with her. Now, he'd never been out of Africa, literally. He'd always lived in the Masai Mara, and he wore the clothing for that time, his normal clothing. And she went back to the UK after a holiday, vouching that she would go back again. And she went literally just before Christmas, and she spent Christmas Day in a hot air balloon with this chap. And they sort of declared their love for each other. And then she knows she's got to come back to the UK, and he decides he'll come with her. So he's the one that makes the change in his life, and he comes over to the UK in wintertime, dressed in sandals and his long, what they wear, traditional wear, and he doesn't understand anything, and she's been running around like a mad thing getting her home for him. She's told her friends all about him. They think that he's up to no good, that he's a con artist. The only one person who doesn't is her neighbour, and that's because he started to get feelings for her. But when he realises that she's actually in love with this chap, he is on her side. No, he's a nice man, a very nice man. And the guy comes, and a lot of her neighbours love him because he's so kind. He'll go out with his he has to have a staff, as you know, the Masai Mara. He has to have his staff. So he's created one, he's made one, and he goes round making sure the place is safe, that his neighbours are safe, and if he sees anything untoward, he'll deal with it. And so all her neighbours love him. They ask him to do jobs for him, but they say, we know you can't be paid because you're in this country, you know, you're allowed to be in this country a certain amount of time, but you can't work until you get your proper visa. So we're not going to give you any money. But they give her things, so people can't say they're giving it him. So she gets the wine and she gets the meat, but it's for them.
Okay.
So they give food and stuff like that. But they give it her so nobody can say he's getting stuff, because if they knew he was getting stuff, he's being paid for work. So they did it that way, and her friend, so-called best friend, and her other so-called best friends are all against him and saying that she's stupid and gullible and, you know, she needs to get rid of him and all this. And of course her heart's broken because she loves him and he loves her and he's genuine. He's genuine. And because of the way her friends, they went out, they went to a place to learn to ski and snowboard and that. And he was very good. He was a natural, which is not what her friends wanted. They wanted him to make a fool of himself, and he didn't. He was very good on the snowboarding. And the way they spoke to him was horrendous, and he leaves because he doesn't want to put her in a position where she has to make a choice between him and her friends. And that's the sort of man he is, and he disappears, and she's really heartbroken, and she's trying to find him, and her next door neighbour keeps driving around because he doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know nothing, and he ends up on the news. Somebody tried to mug someone and he jumped in and saved them and taught this bloke a lesson, so he's on the news as a hero. And she manages to find out whereabouts he is, and her so-called best friend feels terrible about what she said. So there's her, there's his neighbour, and they're running around trying to find him. They find him, and they get married.
Oh.
And she's pregnant. But they're going to go back to the Masai Mara and have a traditional wedding. But it's a really nice story. It's one of these where, you know, it's light-heartedness, but it shows, you know, he's gone for big change, total big change for him. He's totally out of his comfort zone, and the only wild animals around are humans, which are some of the worst wild animals, let's face it. But it is a nice story, and it's got a nice ending.
Oh,
so I do recommend, if you're having a low time and you're not having a good time at all, read a Carole Matthews book. Because I've read, I didn't realise I'd read some of her books before. That's a cat decimating the place, sorry. Let's Meet on Platform 8. I got that on a free magazine thing, and it was a brilliant book. I didn't realise it was the same one. So that's Carole Matthews, wrapped up in you. And that's the cat. That I give 4.5, but then that's because it's lovey-dovey and I'm not a lovey-dovey sort of person. I'm not a romantic
God help
person.
our thing for February.
This one, on the other hand, Bleeding Heart Square, another psychological thriller, but with this one, while you're reading it, you actually keep thinking it's real, that the story in it is real, because they mention Oswald Mosley, who most people know who had history, was after the First World War, and he was trying to get into government. I think he got so far in, and he got his black shirts, and they were fascists and not nice people at all. And he's mentioned in this book, and there's a woman named Lydia, and she's married to a titled man who's not a gentleman at all, shall we say. And what happens with Lydia Langstone, Mrs. Langstone, is her husband hits her one time. They come home, he's with a guest in the drawing room, and she comes home, opens the door, and she's got some great news to tell him. And she wants to tell him, and she says to the guest, please excuse me, I'd like a word with my husband. So he gets up and says, excuse me, or smiles, goes out and beats her one for interrupting him. And she said, but I've got not. And he said, I don't want to know him. And he's really horrible and nasty to her. She goes upstairs, because he tells her to get out of his way. And he goes back to talk to his important guest, who was Oswald Mosley's second in command or something like that. And he's interested in joining the party and wanting a place in history, as it were. She's gone upstairs and she's packing her bags. She's not one of these who's going to let her husband beat her. What happens then is that with this book, it's sort of to do with one person really that's running all the way through it. And it's a lady that went missing some years before. And whenever you see this sort of writing, almost italics, but not quite, it's this woman who's the one that's being looked for. Her name is Philippa Penhow, and she went missing. And whenever you see that writing, it's what's happening then, and that was in 1930. And these little bits turn up throughout the book. So it's basically to do with her. Now, she went missing, and there is a police officer who believes that she was murdered, and he's determined to find out the truth. There's a new journalist named Rusty, and the police officer cons him into working for him.
Yeah.
Because he's gone to this place, Bleeding Heart Square, which apparently in the olden days was believed that the devil had actually danced there. That's how it got the name. She leaves her beautiful home and goes to stay with her dad, who lives in Bleeding Heart Square, number 7, and it's a dump, to put a word for it. And the landlord isn't a nice man. You find out the landlord is a paedophile, and she finds out during the book, not at the end, I won't tell you what happens at the end, but she finds out that she's actually his daughter. He raped her mum when her mum was very, very young. He'd raped another girl, the policeman's daughter, and she was very, very, very young, and she died giving birth because she was too young. And this policeman is after this guy. This Joseph, this landlord, was also involved with Miss Penlow, and he conned her, and they believe that he murdered her, but he always told people that she'd gone away and met up with an ex-boyfriend in America, and that's where she is, and all this, and people just accepted what he said. But the police officer really believes that he'd murdered her. So he gets this journalist on site to help him, and he gets her to help him. And all the way through the book, there are things happening where this landlord, this horrible man, keeps getting these parcels, and in these parcels is off. So all the way through, although the story is about several different people, they're all tied up with this Philippa Penlow. It's ever such a good read. You find out at the end how this Joseph really was involved with everybody's life in one way or another. It makes you think it's a real story, and it's not. And that disappointed me at the end, because I was expecting it to be real, but it's definitely a 5, really is a 5. You think it's real, and it's not, but it's well read. It's well written, it's just brilliant. It really is a good book, and Andrew Taylor, fantastic author. I like the way he's done it. Bleeding Heart Square, brilliant psychological thriller. Can't tell you the ending, but it's fantastic.
Good. How many stars would you give it?
Definitely a 5.
5.
Definitely.
Cool.
So,
well, thanks for enjoying this lengthy video, guys. I didn't realise Jill had 5 books to review. And
there won't be so many next time.
And we didn't realise how long our reviews are going to be, but when you like a book, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So what will be happening next is we'll be uploading some videos from February as well. Once we've read them, we'll also go through the books that we have decided to read first, and then go through with you the review once we've read them. So we're going to go now and give the books back to the library. Thank you for watching. Anything you want to say?
Not really, just keep reading,
Yeah.
keep watching, try and get more people. And side note, Andy Stewart of Cats in Space, keyboard artist, brilliant, was trained by Julian Lloyd Webber's mummy. He's doing a cookery thing called wok, as in a wok and roll, tonight, and he's brilliant. Please watch it.
Okay, well, so yeah, guys, thank you for watching. Keep reading, and if you want to ask any questions, ask them below or message me on Instagram or Jill on Facebook.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.